image, the video you were looking at would give you like little arrows in real time that would say like, here's this thing, and then you would do it.
Yeah.
Like a step-by-step like hand guiding.
That's sick, yeah.
That'd be kind of cool. I think that would be a good use of...
I would have a blast working on cars in that context as a guy who has zero experience under the hood. That would be so fun.
It seems like it'd be...
To have like the YouTuber's hands like guiding my hands.
And like little like notes that pop up next to it that say like, careful, don't fuck it up in this way. So like it seems like it's like the next evolution of how tutorial video was like a huge step up from reading written instructions, but nothing to this day still, nothing beats like a tutor, like a hand-on-hand, like an apprentice learning from someone who's right there, who's experienced and is like literally showing you. That's like the most native human way of teaching, I think, which is why people still pay for tutoring, even though they could get it on YouTube. It's just the delivery. That's the only thing that's different. But if you had a future YouTube that was like a kind of like experience tube or something where you just were like, hey...
Experitube.
Because I feel like actually that might be like one overlooked aspect. Everyone thinks about the Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse as being like this glorified version of Zoom, where everyone's like there in real time having like a stupid meeting about something that doesn't matter. Maybe that's just our inability to imagine cool uses of virtual space is just due to like the recent trauma of having been like forcibly Zoomified, and so we hate that now. But like, can you imagine? What if there was a YouTube where you had recorded amazing tutorials to teach you how to like, work on do stitches on someone or something like that?
Yeah, but no one. It's about the person involved. No one wants Zuckerberg or to remember. No one wants to remember that Zuckerberg owns all the apps that they're using every day. And no one trusts him to cultivate a platform without turning it slowly to dystopian nightmare. It's a strange thing that he owns Instagram, and so everyone can talk shit about Zuckerberg and Facebook, but everyone's using Instagram.
Well,
but the reason everyone is still using Instagram is because he's largely kept his hands off it and just let it stay the same thing forever.
I think Zuckerberg is... I'm really happy that Zuckerberg is... looks like he's lining up to be the fall guy for the dystopianification of the internet.
That'll be like 60 seconds.
You know something interesting about diesel engines? They don't need spark plugs.
That's cool.
That's why they're hella reliable. Because when you compress the fuel in the air to a certain critical density, the natural temperature ignites the fuel-air mixture and it just like kicks the piston back down. So that's why they have to warm up for a minute, though, is because that process doesn't happen efficiently if it's not to a certain level, and if you try to drive off in your diesel engine and rev it before it's warmed up, it's not good for the engine. And that's what a driver of a diesel truck tells themselves every time they idle out outside someone's window. Or at a truck stop, literally all night. And I experienced that this last summer, sleeping at a couple rest stops on by I-5.
Yeah.
And I got there to one. This was up in Oregon. I got there around 9 p.m.
I've had this experience too.
This is great. There's only, there's another van life person over there. Oh, and look, they have a dog. This is so charming. There's even a bathroom, And then 11:30 p.m. about to doze off to sleep. I hear this. I'm like, fuck. This is cool. He's probably just charging his battery. 45 minutes later. I'm like, fuck. And then there's more of them joining in. There's a chorus. They all pull it because it's gets around midnight, which is pretty much I guess truckers when they quit or something, and 40 trucks just come and then just all together like a chorus, and then it's just like a fucking drone. It's like I'm in a rainforest, but instead of like cicadas, there's like big rigs. And
Yeah.
I feel like that was a tangent, though.
Yeah, earplugs are important for this first world life. Should we talk about something?
Well, I wanted to finish my thought about Zuckerberg being the fall guy.
Okay.
I think that he is doing us a big service because, you know, the internet is not all bad, and we're just really down on it right now. And I think that what Zuckerberg is going to be is he's going to be the scapegoat of society. I was thinking about this thing that Peter Thiel talked about one time, where one of the philosophers that he cites all the time is René Girard, who's this French radical dude. Like, I feel like that's redundant when you say French radical. It seems like it's like a... Yeah, but in any case...
Was that a synonym before the French Revolution? Has the French Revolution, like, imprinted itself? Like, have they ever recovered? Did they ever recover from the French Revolution?
No. The French Revolution did imprint itself. That's why I think that's the reason. They're the OG modern fire starters.
Yes.
The fire starters of modernity.
Well, I mean, we could use some more of that, seems like. What are they doing now?
I think French in America had kind of an OG fire starter bro fest in the 18th century with the whole revolution and all that stuff. The French Revolution and American Revolution were...
Did those go together?
Well, the French bailed America out.
Oh, did they help?
Oh, yeah.
Financially? Is that
No,
what you mean
militarily.
by bail? Oh, okay.
No, the French, I think, were instrumental in the eventual defeat of
I see.
whoever the big British mustache, red coat wearing dude was.
Yeah, I haven't
Who was
watched...
fighting George Washington. God bless him.
I haven't watched Mel Gibson's The Patriot in a while, so I don't quite recall my revolutionary history.
The year is 2035. School requires so much funding. The budget has increased so much that it's just Netflix now. And 99% of the money goes to Netflix.
Of the school funding money?
Yeah, in the year 2035, humans are getting... we've decided collectively that there should be $5 million per student.
Well, we don't even remember anymore that The Patriot with Mel Gibson isn't history.
It's its own...
We've forgotten that that's fiction.
Wait, I feel like that's irresponsible to make blockbuster Hollywood historical fiction movies that implant lies into the misinformation, into the... Because you know kids are not going to pay attention to school if they've seen The Patriot. They're going to go, oh, this is a way more accessible form of information.
Yeah.
If you made it historically accurate... The reason I'm thinking about this is because actually I learned a lot of history myself from Age of Empires. Because in the Age of Empires, where you put the CD-ROM in your computer, in your desktop, press the button, the tray comes out. Age of Empires, Age of Kings, put it in there, make sure it's like flat, not like sideways. Then push the button, it goes.
That blessed sound.
Yeah, and then it's just the dopamine. It's just like, my like 9-year-old self is like about to orgasm, even though he doesn't know what that is yet for a little while. And then the Age of Empires, Age of Kings boots up, and
Yeah, that first like window on the desktop screen.
And the music starts, and it's like some monks singing, and there's actually in that game, there's like a history section where it's like a scroll, and you can go through and read about like the history of like the Moors and like the Ottomans or whatever, and I'm like, that's great, and it's all like basically just like copy pasted from the encyclopedia.
Yeah.
And it's great. I learned a lot of history about that, and the fact that you go in and you play the campaign, and you really engage with it, and it's fun. It makes it stick into the minds of of pre-adolescent boys.
Big levels are actually attached to big battles historically.
Yeah.
And so it matters to you personally why this battle is happening and the forces of it. And then that gives your adult self a little like brain hook for the next time you see that battle referred to. Your adult mind then has a personal like chemical dependency relationship to learn about it as an adult, to actually fill out the knowledge of that thing, because you already have a emotional experience with it. It just lacks the adult, like, analytical systems understanding of it.
Yeah, exactly. The emotional salience is what makes memories stay in your brain.
Yes, memory is about emotional intensity, not factual accuracy. But the factual accuracy can like more readily stick if it has that core of emotional intensity.
Yeah. Oh, man, if school was smart, they would make video games to teach history.
Gamify it.
Yeah, but like not in a stupid way. In like not in like a Duolingo. Like, oh, you got an answer. Like that's bullshit. That's just lazy. That's like taking a textbook and making it into an app because your budget's only $10,000. They need to redirect some effort into making a artistically valid curriculum.
Yes.
Because like, what are you doing? Like, you can't. You're gonna to put kids into the like the assembly line way of looking at things, and then
yes.
I don't know. It's funny how that's an open question where it's like there's not very many people in the room who are smart enough to know that the current answer is wrong, and so it's hard to convince people to work on something.
No, they're smart enough to know it's wrong. It's just they're not in the career of their passion, so they don't have a sufficient well of emotion and passion to move the mountain necessary against all that entropy to make the change. Very few teachers are there because it's like actually their calling, and they actually wake up like infused with Elon Musk going to Mars levels of passion to do what they do. And without that level of passion, you just can't fix things in a bureaucracy.
So you think there's something wrong with the filter where the kind of people who have that passion get discouraged and are kind of just driven out of such a system?
I go pure Randian zealot with it, where it's a philosophical, nationwide ailment of not recognizing your own desires as part of your mission from God, and fulfilling your own selfish desires for life puts you in jobs that you should be in. People are taught that life is about compromise, and they're taught that from as young an age as possible, and so they adopt careers that reflect an attitude of compromise, and so their very pathways of vital energy are compromised, and they just can't do as much. Like, I've had maybe 2 teachers in my whole life that actually like belonged there. 3 teachers. Mrs. Baldwin in 5th grade, and Madrinich, my chem teacher in high school.
Sounds like a Hogwarts teacher.
She looked like a Hogwarts teacher.
Baldwin sounds pretty normal.
And Mike Williams, my field biology teacher, who would take us out on a field trip every week.
That's cool.
And so it was lab with lecture, which is the only fucking kind of college course that should exist, in my opinion. Lab with lecture, with the same teacher. 2 different teachers for lecture and lab, like, unless they're like married or have some like symbiotic like thing with each other, like, it's so disconnected.
Yeah, one of my best classes in college was a lab lecture. Actually, now that I think about it, I had this geology course.
Geology, very cool.
Mr. Ferguson. And Mr. Ferguson had this kind of energy where he wasn't a fucking dweeb. He was more of like a stoner. Except he was like not just a stoner, he was also a retired Navy diver.
Wow.
And like he was like probably in his 30s, and he had like that little bit of like that kind of like hot professor thing going on.
Okay.
And he had a really nice way of teaching where he just kind of talked slowly and not frantically, and he didn't assign homework, and you just had to pass the exams.
Yeah.
And then like the labs were something where he understood that the whole point of it was just for people who were excited to have some extra interest, and it wasn't like a way of like filtering out the, like people think of, I think so many professors don't have a sense of art when it comes to teaching. They have a sense of bureaucratic obligation, and they think
That's
that the
right.
purpose of their course is to weed out the weak instead of like identifying the strong and realizing those are the only people who really, it matters if they're there anyways.
Yes.
So like, why do you let a preoccupation with making sure no one cheats and gets ahead when they shouldn't, like, spoil your effort and your focus on like helping the people who actually care? Because the people who get ahead, what are they doing? It's not like you're ever going to fundamentally win by, if your strategy in school is to like get a better grade than you really deserve, like that's going to bottom out pretty fast. I think. But anyways, yeah, Ferguson, he was awesome. I remember 99% of what was in that course, and I really feel like I could walk in today and take the final exam and probably get like an A on it.
That's amazing.
Because there was emotional salience of it. And it's
yeah.
not just that. I mean, I actually am really interested in geology too, a little bit. My sister is studying that shit at UCSB, so maybe it's in the genes. But it really helped what he did. He like had like this kind of like coolness. He was just cool, and you have this part of your brain that just turns on when you're listening to someone who evidently enjoys what they do. Because I think there's a little bit of hesitation if you're learning something important for your future, so that you can be like me someday. I'm like, and then someone's like, I don't want to. Like, no, where's the exit? Like, you're looking around, eyes are darting, but you're just like a kid, Maybe there's something like that going on.
There was a great math video game at my elementary school, and you had to get to the top of the tower. And it was just a side scroller, and then it would like go to a world map when you beat the level to show you how far up the tower you got. And I never got to the top of the tower, but like the amount of pure mystery and like Pandoras Box just like pouring from the top of that pixelated tower image. I was pixelated like, tower. Good God, I have to get to the top of that tower. But these math equations are like so outside of my depth. I remember that from like maybe third grade or something, and math was one of my strongest subjects after that into high school. I just got to way ahead of everyone else without even trying at all. I didn't have to try. I only had to try in high school twice, and that was when I started calculus and in Madrinich's chemistry class.
Calculus is actually a lot easier than people give it credit for.
It wasn't for me. I had to spend half my lunches in there doing an extra full hour of calculus.
You probably had a shitty teacher. Are you a geometry person?
She wasn't great.
How'd you do in geometry?
Not great.
Okay.
I didn't have passion really for math at any point. I was just naturally gifted at it. And then like it was fun. Yeah. Calculus was fun just because I'd never had to try before. So just like it was novel to try, but then that didn't take me past that into a second semester of it. So I wasn't very interested. And then the other video game that I remember is like Mario typing. And
Mario typing?
Yeah, Mario typing.
I had a typing program called Mavis Beacon. I want to get into that. Also, I want to talk about the, I have one comment on the math music thing, and then I have another comment on, a quick tangent on Pandora. But those are queued up. Finish what you're going to say. Okay. No, I feel like I interrupt. Well, I don't interrupt, but I talk for a long time, and I go from thing to thing, so
Okay, well, the math music thing is fun, and there can be some Pandora at the top of the tower sprinkled in.
Yeah, that's where it belongs. Otherwise, too many people would get into it. You have to prove your worth before you open Pandora's Box.
We had a lot more numbers involved, Ade and I, in our earlier music, because modern metal tends to the dissociated intellectual, and so you like play games with meter, with timing and stuff, and act like that's a substitute for good music.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of a crutch. Only because I'm imagining myself making music, and I would immediately be like, I'm going to solve this.
Yeah.
Because that's my natural instinct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was really like just having to. It was actually rooted though in Ade's very unique temperament, and
Also,
he writes riffs based on his feelings, and his feelings very rarely conform to a 4/4 beat. They like loop over to the 1 again wherever they feel like looping over. So
feelings.
so a given riff of his will be often was in 5 or in 7 or in 9, and a lot of gymnastics had to be took a lot of gymnastics to encompass things he would write with other instruments.
Yeah.
But math and music and all that.
Yeah, I look forward to appreciating your guys' next album.
It's going to be fucking crazy.
I've never sat down and made like a study of an album before, and this seems like it will be an opportunity for me to apply that. Because I can like go into it knowing that in principle there's a lot of things, so I have the reassurance that I'm not wasting my time.
Well, you already have that with Hells,
Yeah.
but Accelerant has a lot more to sweeten the deal. We'll have a lot more that sweetens the deal for people who don't just natively like to watch horror movies, for example.
Yeah. Well, I've already listened to Hells a couple times, and I feel like I was just listening to it when I was coding, and so my initial experience was not full attention. I was like getting the unconscious experience of it, but I wasn't like thinking about it, you know. It'd be cool to listen to the first time all the way through in an uninterrupted, like, have like a time where like I'm gonna listen to this album now and just kind of sit there and like smoke a little bit in my living room and just like listen to it. That would be like, I think, nice thing to do. Anyways, math and music people. It doesn't surprise me that you were naturally good at math, if, you know, maybe not interested in it, but it doesn't surprise me that you had an affinity, because neurologically math and music people are like the same people. So that's unsurprising.
I can see that.
Yeah.
I was never given its application. I was never given the lab.
Yeah.
And by the time I was ready for a more engaged thing of learning, I was already deep in music.
Yeah. It's funny. I had like the exact inverse experience. I think I would have been really good at music if I would have grown up in a musical family. But I didn't. I grew up in a math family. I remember when I was like 10 years old, I actually built a plane. A model airplane, not from a kit, but from just designed it from like first principles, and like, and my dad helped me with it. My dad has a degree in aeronautical stuff.
Yeah.
So, you know,
that's amazing.
Lift and drag, weight and thrust, and like balancing it so like you find the center of mass, the center of lift, and it actually flew.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was fucking cool. I feel like that thing was like an early little example of. It was like the little it was like the first one of the first articulations of like what my life was gonna be. Is just building shit. At the kind of ignoring everything else. Yeah. I was doing that as a kid too, so I'm happy for my dad sort of like not being like too into school.
Cool.
He was always kind of like, I remember like when I was a kid, he like kind of like he got into an argument with my 5th grade teacher because she was clueless.
Yeah.
And he was like, this shit is too easy. Like, why are they learning this in the 5th grade? Like, fractions, you should have learned that 2 years ago, So I really appreciate him for not like having some standards.
Yeah.
And like having some actual investment in like, why are you going to school? Not like,
school is not good by default.
Yeah.
You got to prove its value to the family.
Like just that perspective, I think, is good to where you realize like, you don't criticize people for the sake of criticizing them. You realize like, okay, there's actually a goal here.
Yes.
Despite the fact that a lot of people involved in it don't really see it that way, and they're just going to their job and they're trying to do the things they think they're supposed to do. But like, someone just going like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing, guys? Like, let's just think about this for like, I that's a good perspective to have, I think.
Where's the Pandora sprinkled on top?
Okay, so Pandora, nothing really related to the tower. Just I had this idea the other day that there should be, because how there's like a music player app called Pandora. There is. Not many people know about it.
Wow, blast from the past.
Yeah, no, it still exists. Apparently, Alicia was telling me at Momona, Pandora is what they use to play.
Oh shit!
And I think it's something to do with like licensing or something, like the fact that Pandora songs come on like in like a radio format.
They do have different licensing arrangements.
So you can play it in a restaurant and it somehow is legally easier or something. But in any case, the app Pandora still exists, and it occurred to me that it might make the app somewhat less functional, but there's a huge missed opportunity in making in the fact that Pandora is not an app that once you install it and turn it on, you literally have to uninstall the app to make the music stop.
What?
Sorry. It's just a pun. Pandora's Box. Once you open it, you can't turn it off.
Okay.
I think that'd be sick.
Okay.
Sorry. I've been like, I thought about that like a few days ago, and I was like, and then like, I've been like trying to like muscle that into every mention of the word Pandora, and so I had to tee that one up for myself, but.
I think my poem that I subjected your Molly-infused mind to.
I read it after. Man, don't disparage. That was a good poem. Don't disparage that poem. I'm
just being self-aware about the forcefulness with which I presented it to you.
Oh, it was well received.
But it's like the Great Leap is like opening the box.
Yeah.
And that's the journey I feel like I'm on right now.
Yeah.
And my ability to say yes to the last 6 months of Pandora's collie nature of hellscapes is...
We're talking about like K-A-L-I, not C-O-L-L.
K-H-A-L-I, yes.
Oh, the H, okay.
Yeah, that very violent deity.
Yeah.
My ability to affirm that experience has opened my bandwidth to embrace everything else that comes out of Pandora's Box too. That's much more flowery and
advertisements,
inspiring.
Yeah.
Like the Fight Club is the latest like strange mutant flower being thrown out of Pandora's Box.
Yeah, I heard rumors of this Fight Club. That's all I know about it, though.
So it's like just one more completely unexpected project of hitherto undeveloped skills that happen to synchronize all my skills in a very mysterious way that maybe the director understood that before I did when I was being enlisted. But I found out after the fact. And it's like, oh, I'm ready for this strange mutant idea. Pandora's Box, is things coming out, is The Great Leap. Anyway, you can talk about that poem. How about that? Because you read it afterwards, too.
The most striking line for me, the line that had the most emotional resonance was... Well, maybe I should read the poem. Maybe you should read the poem, if you prefer.
Do you have your phone?
I do. Or maybe I should read the poem. Just introduce a little complexity.
Let's say the line, though. Get into the line a little bit first, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
curious about the line.
Yeah. The line is the line about the city rising.
From beneath me a city began to rise.
Yeah.
I was not afraid. They were falling too.
Buildings and all.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll read the poem.
Okay. The Great Leap.
By Alex Light. At cliff's edge, cloud tops wait below, deliberating... Fuck. I already fucked it up. Guys, take two.
Take two.
At cliff's edge, cloud tops wait below, deliberating, knees shaking. I choose the air's embrace. Then, see, I'm already falling. The choice already beat me in the race. Suspended moisture coolly kisses my face as I go by, but an hour flies away, then the whole day, my free fall lulls me to dream state. I see other passerby who've taken the great leap, whole groups of them sometimes, holding hands to form a circle, falling. A would-be friend, an interminable distance away, waves all his limbs. Hello, points below us to a cloud far below, for us both to aim for. Taking our ease on divians of air, he asks who I am, that I would decide to take the great leap. I didn't really mean to, I confessed. I mean, I did decide to jump, but when I decided I was already falling, for whole minutes maybe. My friend nodded sagely. For me, I'd already felt my life in free fall for years before I made it to the cliff's edge, and tried every other choice besides. From below us, a city began to rise. I wasn't afraid. They were falling too, buildings and all. This doesn't end anytime soon. None of them thought so, my friend said, but who knows? Yeah, I got excited about the city because that felt like there's a point to everything. And that, like, it made me think about how, we always talk about, like, that we're living in eternity and that we just woke up one day. That's all we really know. I like the idea that at some point we just go, all right, and start building stuff. Mm-hmm. There's like a certain sort of like courage in that. That's like almost like the essence of yes.
Yeah.
Because it's like the most basic thing you could say yes to is just, all right, I don't know what this is, but let's go.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool, actually. That's really cool because it's just like saying, like, you don't need a foundation to start from. You're starting from vacuum.
Yeah.
You need something else. You need a kind of decision to be a foundation.
Yeah, the decision, the affirmation, that's the core of solidity around which reality can accrue.
Side note, Solidity is also the name of the programming language that is native to the Ethereum blockchain. It's cool. That was a good choice. A lot of people criticize it, but I think it's cool. Anyways.
Criticize its name, or
yeah, just because it's like just its name. I don't know why people criticize everything. It's stupid. It's like, you invent a fucking computer language, asshole. You can name it. I'm a big fan of Vitalik Buterin. He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a lot like you.
I'm gonna say thank you.
You can see the similarities.
I like the way he talks. When someone asks him a question, he goes, and he's like, his brain's coming at it from like 60 different angles, and people who are listening to him are just like, oh, yeah, and he's just like mushing something into this, because he's like, everything has to be like so accurate, because if he says like one wrong word, then like the smart contract's gonna fail and everything's gonna come crashing down. So he has like this like super accurate way of speaking.
Yeah, because he literally built his livelihood on his ability to make the blockchain
articulate something that is so strong.
Yes. Yeah, strong articulation is like what he's built his livelihood on, so it's what he's built his personality on.
Yeah.
So that's how he talks.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way in which Hells has made me, for better and for worse. It's like, because that's the engine that's taken me into the future.
Yeah.
And that's the engine I'm using to build a better engine. It's like makes its way into the way I see the world, and makes its way into the way I speak. And it's complete as an art piece. It's complete and thorough and alchemistic, but it's also very dark. So there's failings to it, and it's like not fuel efficient.
Yeah. Well, you don't really care about fuel efficiency when your vessel's just trying to survive the battering waves.
That's right. Yeah. We can talk about rolling.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. You left somewhat early from that party, and I was curious to see what your experience was.
Following my departure?
Yeah, following your departure. Or, I mean, just in general. But that was the first time that I'd ever experienced that, and my experience was very, very social, interpersonal kind of experience. I don't know, maybe it's a totally different thing if you're by yourself. I could easily imagine that.
Similar themes carried over from being more social with it to this time of being on a solitary journey and having a bullet list of things that had to get done.
Like things to think about, or like actual work to do? Actual work
to do. And so the party could only take like so much depth because I had to cultivate a focus that was independent from the party. And so my connections with people could only like hit a certain depth.
Right.
And when I went home around 1 or so and closed my eyes in bed for like 40 minutes, and that was my real heart-to-heart. That's a theme that carried over, is like craving the heart of the matter and finding my way to the heart of the matter, and in the way that it's a truth serum, like you said. It's if I'm talking to someone, I'm really craving like immediately getting to the core of the issue.
Yeah, that was really remarkable.
It's beautiful, yeah. And so I was just homing in towards that.
Yeah.
And finally found it in prayer, just in conversation with myself and with my lying down with my eyes closed by myself. And I felt like I'd just landed after this like 6-month, 12-month emotional journey of mine.
Yeah.
Like just finished it. Like made a timeline with the chaos of it, in a commitment to go with the timeline, and then completed it And then lying down that night was my first like moment with my yes, to be like, me with myself, we just did that together. We know that that is our greatest accomplishment thus far in our life. This is the greatest triumph of spirit we've ever experienced. But it was also very traumatizing. And there wasn't much to say except just a eye-gazing acknowledgement of achievement and togetherness and friendship within. And there was an I speaking words like that, and there was the feeling of yes itself that I'm cultivating this prayer relationship with, and its words were like blooming, like a physical sensation of blooming, and the flower petals were my skin, were snake scales, would bloom out and fluff out a little to catch sunlight, but oriented inwards, like fluffing out to catch sunlight that was radiating from inside. That was the sense of the yes in my body. And it would like close and open petals, like in a line in timing.
So you were like, it's making me think of a Dyson sphere. So you were catching your own energy.
Yeah, or the body was catching the soul's energy.
Yeah. I like this way you're describing this we thing.
Yeah, me and my yes.
Right.
Which is like a personally constructed imaginal thing to refer to simply what happens in my body when I ask what a yes feels like. But I have a whole like mythic, personal like cosmology about it.
Yeah, I like that way of thinking of things. How it's like a perspective to take on like the idea of integrity. Like if you do something that you feel kind of bad about, you feel like you're being judged by yourself.
Yes.
And there's
the book of judgment is open, read to you.
Yeah, and there's
right now though.
So there's like this more honest part of yourself that is kind of like you have to have you have to tend to that relationship too. That's like a person who you can disappoint, or a person you can impress, or a person you can learn things from. That internal relationship. Yeah, I feel like that can get really squirrely, because a lot of people, I think, sort of have like just a really alienated relationship with that person inside them, and so they go looking for easier friends outside to kind of like cold shoulder that internal person a little bit. I'm just speaking from my own experience. The times in my life when I felt bad about something, I felt like I was selling out. I felt like I wasn't living up to my own, you know what I mean? But like I wasn't living up to my, you know what I mean? Like there's something about those two perspectives in you that really speaks to. I feel like you couldn't have certain feelings if you didn't have those somewhat independent. I wouldn't even say. I think one, like you said, one of them is like your soul, and then the other one is like, I guess, just your mind's construction of this, what the soul is sending to you. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was, let's see. So the story of that trip was of no like glorious experience with the drug or with someone else, the way the drug often creates. It was this like quiet acknowledgement of personal triumph independent of anyone.
Yeah.
And and at a party, it's like very aggravated at a party to seek outside yourself for fulfillment. because partying is a social thing.
Right.
And is so like my party mind is still like linked back to the first parties ever,
Right.
of like being 18 and just like and like people representing this were present at the party, like just looking for someone to hook up with of the opposite sex. And so you're just this freewheeling, lost, uncentered thing looking outside for fulfillment. And I could see those tendencies in me come in and be entertained and then come out. And it wasn't me like thinking, oh, but like really I should be with myself. Like that's the moral, like best thing. It wasn't saying that or thinking that or trying that. It was actually experiencing that of, oh, the sweetest experience I could possibly be having right now is with my soul mate, my soulness. That's where, like, that, like, looking, grasping thing, like, it has something to grasp, and it's grasped it, and I found it, and I'm here, and I'm, like, existentially trajectorized around a real core of solidity. And just like at the party itself, just taking a walk around the block just to like feel things was like some of my favorite parts of the party.
I remember the air felt quite cool on my skin. It was like this like moist, cool sensation. Mm-hmm. That's happened to me on mushrooms before too, where I start feeling like the exquisite temperature of the night, and it's like this like cool, pleasant, like cold water on your hands or something like that. It's like a nice, where you kind of feel like your body is like this really warm body, and then like the cool air. I don't know. That's really nice, just for the physical sensation of it. But yeah, I didn't walk around at all. I actually don't have many. Like I said before, I have a really bad episodic memory, in the sense of like who, what, when, where. I don't know, man. Mm-hmm. Those are just the whole thing is just kind of like a hole to me, and I just have flash bulbs of meaningful moments and thoughts and stuff like that. It was.
Go on.
Yeah, it was. Well, like I said, like I told you before, the most striking thing to me was that I just felt like I had like the ability to speak truth more so than I normally can. Most of the time, whenever I say I want to say something true, it's like this whole process of constructing and figuring out how to communicate the thing that is true. But I felt like when I was in that state, I was able to like, I just realized like, wow, I have all these things that I know are true. Here you go, here you go, here you go, here you go. So like cool. Every person I interacted with, I was just like I said something that was like the truth, and that took away. You know how they say like, people have said like Molly reduces social anxiety. I imagine like of course that's true, but I wonder, for me it felt like the reason why it did was just because I knew what I was saying was true. Yeah. Not that like I was in some sort of state where like, oh, I'm so relaxed, I'm not going to get nervous. It's not that. It was just like, anytime you have something that you're really sure about, you're not nervous saying it because you're like, this is fucking true. Mm-hmm. And so you have this boldness to just want to like this is important, I'm going to say it. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kind of took out of it. I was like, this is really fucking great.
And you're able to speak with authority.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was like this, it almost felt like prophetic. Like I had this ability to speak truth, but like it's my own like personal, like not like prophecy like Nostradamus shit, but like prophecy like in my life, my own, like I'm saying this is true. This is true because I'm saying it, kind of thing, like personal, like a personally prophetic statements.
There's a mysterious give and take of creating the truth and perceiving the truth, and they kind of there's a give and take there of would. And I wrote this in one of our Molly essays that Jade and I wrote. I asked the question of, would some of those prophetic truths have been real if you hadn't given voice to them, Jade? Are they potential truths prior to your decision to like affirmatively say them?
I think so. I think they're latent.
But there's a big part of creativity is just perceiving the truth. And just giving it form, giving what you see to have form, giving it form.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like a big part of my creative process is just like telling it like it is. It's just honesty and like, okay, what am I seeing and what tools do I have to describe the experience in the language of my tools of the truth that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to. One other thing about that was that I feel like I'm somehow when I'm thinking about it, I'm focusing on this as like my ability to speak truth, but also there was something behind that too. It was like there was also something that was like I felt like I had much more. There was like this. Like this feeling like I wanted to be really, like not only did I like have something to say, but I wanted to. Just I feel like I was able to see like sort of like the people in a new light where there was just like I don't know, just like kind of seeing like the glint in someone's eye. Like seeing like this, like I had a really, really nice probably one of the biggest highlights, because actually, so I had two different kind of experiences when I was at first. The first thing I did is me and Alicia went to this a side room where there was like this experimental jazz and stuff, and it was like perfect because I just sat there and like I talked to Alicia every single day at length about everything, but. And it's really easy to think like you've talked about everything, like you're, like what have we not talked about? But suddenly when like the veil or that fog is lifted, it's like, oh, like actually I could still get to know you if I wanted to.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Actually, like, who are you?
Yeah. What's up? Whoa. Like. Oh yeah. Hey.
Didn't see you there.
Dude. Yeah. Like that. Isn't that crazy?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And so that was really cool. I felt really happy to have. I feel like, man, Molly and like close relationships are just like.
Oh yeah.
Like. Yeah. That was beautiful. That
like
was really
white on rice.
Yeah. That was really beautiful. I felt like you could go up to a stranger and probably have a nice conversation. You can go to one of your friends and you can have an even better conversation.
That's right.
And then you can go to like your partner and you can have a hell of a good conversation.
Yeah.
And it's like just cool. Like so, yeah, that was.
And that was part one.
That was part one, and then part two is when I went and talked to Taylor, Jade, Ade, Joe, talked to a few other people too. Hayes, had a nice conversation with Hayes. He's telling me about his firefighter days, some stuff that was like really dark and personal, but it felt really nice to listen to somebody. And yeah, it was a good experience. I felt like it was just like I feel like though like it potentiates your friends in a way that you see like how much relationships are doing for you that you didn't appreciate. Like how much like how central relationships are to what you have.
How foundational and
Yeah, and how much you need them.
generative. Or
Yeah.
They create the house you live in.
Yeah.
And this very like house foundations on stone instead of sand kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of like things that are unequivocal and yeah, a concretization of truth, a sort of a truth that doesn't need to be articulated, a truth that is like, or can be articulated. It's an invitation to articulate it.
I do think about Molly. I've rolled 3 times now, and I do think it has an animus and an agenda itself. Like I can intuitively sense it's still working, like still working through my system even now, and like coming in waves and altering like subconscious attitudes.
There's little aftershocks that are equalizing.
With a compassionate like plan that the chemical itself has. That's my sense of it. I haven't like, it's like a pet idea you hear a lot with mushrooms and with LSD to a lesser extent, but I am feeling an experience of it with Molly of it's an experience of it as medicine, as like powerful medicine, powerful long-acting medicine.
Yeah.
That like you really let one dose like sink down and down and down and down and work all the way through your system before you take another dose.
Yeah.
Because what the connections it's making, it is locking in with your relationships to deepen the relationships and to sweeten the relationships.
Like your body has to do its thing. Like I like scraped my hand the other day and I've just been like watching the skin repair itself and like make a scab and like go back to perfect.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a cool meditation on life there. Watching my cat go through that is pretty amazing. The depth of wounds he can abide with.
Yeah.
And be like completely at ease with an open wound in his side that's like huge.
Your body just like bondos it up and it just like puts a shiny new coat of paint over that. Yeah.
Yes. Do you vibe with that at all? About Molly having an agenda?
I don't feel like it's the chemical itself. I feel like it's a sort of I feel like it's kind of like when you kick a fire. It goes like a little bit, you know, because you broke some of the surfaces that were already charred over, and you destabilized the whole thing, and you opened up new, previously unexposed surfaces that are like coming back to equilibrium with this release of energy. That's what it feels like to me. It feels like
but they come back to equilibrium in a new way that is super reflective of the mood of that trip.
Yes. I guess I don't think the chemical itself contains information. I think that your brain contains information, and that in interaction with the chemical, you're experiencing your body and yourself. You're experiencing movement in yourself, like internal movement. It's just really just semantics. I agree completely with the experience of that.
But it's so romantic to think we could find new conscious minds within man-made chemicals.
Yeah, but
Like
okay.
finding AI in the
So here's the thing.
in Zuckerberg's metaverse. Sorry.
Yeah. So I can see that I could totally buy that with mushrooms. You don't have to convince me very much. I totally buy that idea that, like, oh yeah, it's totally possible that mushrooms have like a kind of super intelligence, because intelligence seems to be coexistent with life, and if you really start looking into what's going on in mushrooms, it's like clear that there's a whole billions-year-old agenda. Yeah. Like, no shit. But so I can believe that with mushrooms, but things like LSD, Molly, these are lab chemicals.
So philosophically, you're making an argument against true AGI then, because why shouldn't a brand new form of consciousness come awake to itself in a physical arrangement we haven't seen before? Evolution isn't done.
I just think there's not enough information density in those molecules to encode intelligence.
It's in the connection, the arc of electricity of that chemical hitting a human mind.
Yes, okay, sure. I think that it's entirely possible that the human mind chemical system has encoded within it a kind of intelligence that we don't ordinarily perceive. But our mind is a absolutely necessary component to that.
But the mind being necessary to it doesn't mean it couldn't be a completely sovereign alien consciousness that identifies itself as that chemical arrangement and not a human mind.
To me, that just seems like it's unnecessary to postulate that. It's like an Occam's razor kind of thing. I think that if you do something to a very complex system and you change simple variables, the complex system has enough other information to sort of react in novel ways to the change. Like if you have like an ecosystem and then an asteroid hits and it fucks up everything, the survivors, the latent complexity in that DNA is going to be the seed to cause like a massive explosion of creativity in the ecosystem following that cataclysmic event. I think something like that's going on. There's like a mild, what you do is you just it's like you're bringing yourself a little away from equilibrium so that you can have some like potential energy almost to sort of, and like in the process of returning you create something new. And normally life is doing that for you. It's giving you a constant external source of challenge and conflict and surprise. Yeah. And that's what keeps you alive. Because if you get locked in a windowless room, you're going to die pretty soon.
Yeah. Life itself as a psychedelic influence.
Yes. Life is the input, and your brain is the navigator and like the thing that's modeling itself to your experience. And so there's this interesting feedback where we can control our experience and so thus indirectly chart our course through this multidimensional space. And the Molly is like an ability is a sort of like a way of like breaking down doors that you can just go there, and then when you get there there's this tension between where you were and where you are, and when you bring that tension into yourself you can use that energy to make stuff.
Yeah. Maybe this is an example of the creative process I mentioned, where to me I'm just seeing an experience. Oh, Molly has a mind, has an agenda, all its own, and it's working great with me. And then seeing like, oh, other people don't get that vibe? Well, that's not okay. I'm going to create a Molly mind.
Yeah, good.
Create a new consciousness.
Well, you should.
So that it can be objective and no one can say it's not actually there. But it was really just me experiencing that it was there.
Yeah.
That gave me the inspiration to create the fact that it's actually there.
Yeah, that's its own kind of tension.
And this is where Terence McKenna is so fucking important. this is my rant against the more laboratory, science-based naysayers of Terence, who tear down his hypotheses like time wave zero. Because he's creating things. Like, are DMT elves a thing? Or did they only start existing because Terence decided to spin stories about them existing?
And so now lots of people everywhere are experiencing these elves. Yeah.
Yes. And same thing with the mushroom thing. Mushrooms having a consciousness. Like, was anyone else taking mushrooms having the experience Terence was having of them being minded mushrooms? Probably not. And then he was having that experience, but then it wasn't real until he started talking about it. And this is the power of speaking authoritatively about things you know in your own experience, is it creates those things in other people's experience.
It's like, where do gods come from? Like Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. What? That's a thing. It's a thing that exists, and it influences the world. Mm-hmm. And there's monuments to it, and people talk about it, and there's books about it, and I know about it, and you've heard that before. It's this. Mm-hmm. I think that, and no doubt, many, many, many people's lives have been deeply imprinted by that image.
And it takes on an animus of its own.
Absolutely.
Somewhere in the multidimensional psyche, it starts like swimming around in those currents.
Well, they're like, gods are like kind of like higher level, they're like higher order egos, kind of. They're egos that are composed of the collective perceptions of many people. And then the specific character and nature of that image is a kind of computer code that makes things happen.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, if you're willing to admit that your own thoughts and imaginations are real, then the images we have are absolutely real. They're just distributed.
And there's just layers of real. Like, okay, they're real to me, but I'm physical. So can you make it physically real?
It already is physically real.
This real personal experience you're having, can you like accentuate the physicality of its reality so much that it starts to concretize and people outside of you can see it too? That's the game.
Well, we use
physicality
as a yardstick because it's the only thing that we are confident being objective about.
Yeah.
But if we could see into each other's minds, then we would probably consider ideals, visions, and thoughts a lot more objective without them having to be articulated, because it's like, oh, hey, like you're embodying this and everyone can see it.
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of like what Molly was a little bit for me. It was like seeing into people more.
You were seeing their principles.
Yeah, I was seeing like
acting,
who they were, and it was like I had this experience of like seeing how there's a lot of like it sounds like super cliche, but that like people are like these deep wells of where you're just getting like some stuff, like a sample, kind of, and I don't know. I guess there's a whole. It's hard. You get used to whatever perspective you take on people after a while, and I think it's really easy to habitually underestimate how interesting people are.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're focused on other things. Like I feel like a lot of times, like what I do is I cultivate deep relationships with like limited number of people, and then I kind of write off everyone else, and I go like, I have no idea if you're thinking something like what's going on, and it's you just model people as like actors, strangers, and then sort of, so there's like this, there usually has to be some kind of like almost like grace or something that opens up and brings a vision of someone else, so that you can like latch onto that and dispense with the sort of like what you think you should do.
It talks some about talking with Ade. It'd be interesting to see someone else perceiving him, because I see so often only my form of him.
Right. Yeah. Well.
But you got to be there that night with him once I was gone.
Yeah. I think I told Ade that I saw wisdom behind his eyes, because that was the truth that I was like seeing in that moment. Him and Jade were sitting on the couch, and I saw their energies kind of paired, and it was like that. It was like this very striking sense of place, or like presence, or it's kind of like this. I think Ade has like this. He has a lot of subtlety in his approach to things.
Yeah.
And so that was like there was this, I don't know, there's something about like that slow moving craft energy that is this kind of like I mean, I guess I perceive that as wisdom, but wisdom is a general word. It's more like skill, or like some kind of I don't know, and maybe there might not be a word for this in the English language.
He's like you and your like plane building 10-year-old thing of like disappearing into the workshop.
Technical stuff.
Yeah. Just like build this thing in isolation into reality. You two have that propensity in common.
Yeah.
And I can partake of that in dashes, but for me it's much more this like meta working of patterns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And arranging zoomed out patterns with each other to then like run it through the simulation for a week or two and see what it is, and then like shift a couple blocks around and see how that system works. Subtlety. Ade moves slow enough to introduce his decisions into more and more subtle parts of the movement.
Yeah, it's deliberate.
It can be like when it's slowed down a little more, you can bring more deliberation into more and more pieces of a movement.
Yeah, have you ever seen videos of like people playing like violin in some like Vienna, some like big, classical movement or something like that? Uh-huh. They're going like this. They're going like, it's like this kind of like synthesis of movement, but like precision, like that kind of like, and that's, I guess, maybe that's just what you have to do when you play violin. I don't really know, but it's there's this kind of like there's just a kind of like deliberate movement to things, I think, that that you have to be technically inclined. There's a kind of like, there's like precision and carefulness and sort of this but at the same time it requires like force to get things done. And so there's this like striking, but like in a very sort of like guided, deliberate way, like almost like you're chopping at a block or something, where you're like, so you're combining, like you have like this, you want to make it really accurate. And you have this, you're trying not to fuck up the thing, but you have to cleave it. And you have to, you can't just diddle around and like, and like be possessed with this kind of like free floating, like, let's try this, I guess. You can't do that. You have to like make some decision and then like, boom.
So to achieve that degree of decisiveness with my strokes and follow through of an even pressure from the start of the stroke to the end. For me to achieve that requires a certain kind of focus a lot of times, And I'm thinking of it in these terms because Alicia said yesterday that in terms of her purpose, if she looks at it directly, it kind of like burns off, and like the wind blows it away. And so she has to cultivate. She has to do some tricks to like keep it cultivating. And it's like that for me. Like, if I look directly at, what I look directly at has to be a little more zoomed out.
You need some side-eye, peripheral kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that I can allow that decisive, full, accurate movement to happen. If I like zero in too much on the action of it happening that way, then like that's its own project, and I need to like let go of a lot of things because it's like not effective anymore if I'm looking directly at it.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I vibed with her when she said that.
Yeah. Alicia says really profound things in a very understated way sometimes.
That's a secret to communication.
And then if you miss it,
that's like a good teaching skill.
A lot of times Alicia will say something, and then she doesn't like to repeat things she says though. So you kind of have to like catch it, and then just take it. And yeah, yeah, it's. Man, think about what people could accomplish if they actually knew how to work together. That would be wild.
Yes, yeah, leadership.
And like united purpose. Think what people could accomplish.
That's one thing, back to the very beginning of AR, that's one thing we can leverage AR towards, is the leader of the vision gets to go, see what I mean?
Yeah.
In really high resolution.
Right.
And the whole team is like, I see what you mean. Now we're united in this thing because we all can see it objectively.
Instead of people who just are there realizing that at some point they have to pretend to understand what someone's talking about, otherwise they'll get booted out.
Yeah.
That's not great to have when you're. Yeah, I think a good leader is someone who makes people really comfortable about being confused, because otherwise you're going to get a lot of false agreement and a lot of like false assurances that people understand you.
Yeah, a good leader wants you there as you are, and not as you're expected to be, but like a good leader is able to like see where you actually are and then like give you a prompt of how can you leverage that towards our objective vision right now.
Yeah. And having like that, just like commitment to clarity and a kind of determination that it doesn't matter how long it takes to get to the same point, but we have to get to the same point before we go to the next place. Otherwise, you just given up on the whole thing. Because then at some point, you're just going to quit. Like, I'm thinking about my brother right now because I got a lot of time to speak with him when I was out in Oklahoma last week or a couple weeks ago. And he's one of those people who, more so than anyone else I know, he will continue being like, what I don't, like, he'll just continue to express that he does not understand what you were saying if he does not understand what you were saying.
Yes.
And he'll never be like, oh yeah, totally. Yeah. And then just write it off, which is great because I feel like a lot of things I say are like, I feel like I'm always like building the Great Pyramid whenever I'm talking, where I'm like, I gotta say a lot of things first. For this, that's the number one layer, and then I gotta tell you, and you have to understand those things for you to understand this thing, and then you're gonna have to understand these things for you to understand that thing. And the whole time I'm like, the whole point of what I'm talking about is the capstone, but I'm only explaining the things that are necessary for you to understand all the things you need to know to build up to what I'm actually trying to say. And that's how I used to tutor math when I used to when I used to do math tutoring, I developed this way of talking that I explain things in a very exhaustive way, but what that requires is like trust on the part of the person listening to me that I'm actually getting somewhere.
Right.
And in that specific scenario where like people were paying me to explain them math, it was easy for most people to accept that because it's like, oh, well, this is what school literally is, you know. But in normal conversations, it's really not that common to be like, so I have a thesis. You know what I mean? Like this kind of like big, here's a big thing I've thought about, and here's all the things that it's coming from and what it's all leading to and why it matters. Here you go. Like that takes a while to explain. There's things that take like 20 minutes to say properly. Yeah. There's a lot of things like that I want to say to people, but it takes like half an hour to explain it. Mm-hmm. And I have to talk about so many things to get to the point. And my brother can sit there, he just has like this like stamina to like handle that shit. So I really appreciated that. Cool. I feel like there's something there about a person who's a good leader knows how to speak very efficiently and not give people the idea that you're not going anywhere, you know, because I think unconsciously people will tune you out if you say a bunch of stuff that's pointless and doesn't lead anywhere.
Yep.
Like that Pandora joke I had. Probably an egregious example of like a letdown of something I talked up and then it kind of, but I'm just joking. But yeah, that's why maybe that's like why on YouTube, when you know, there's like, when you see like, oh, this person has like 5 million subscribers. I don't really know what this weird video is, but probably it's not a waste of time. It's probably not going to be 4 minutes of my life that I just didn't get back. That there's like some social proofing in wanting to like your mind unconsciously pays more attention to people when there's like this little signal that like, oh, other people have paid attention to this person too and they didn't get their time wasted too bad, so maybe you could do it.
Yeah, you get let down a lot with that. It's
getting worse and worse. I feel like there's just an imbalance in how easy it is to make convincing seeming stuff.
Yeah, but then like your nuanced ability to detect bullshit in a YouTuber's first 30 seconds increases also.
Yeah, and I don't really watch that much YouTube. I think it's just an endemic problem of the whole internet that is yet to be solved, but it is currently being solved, is just how to parse the massive fire hose of stuff and figure out what's the good stuff. Because it's obviously a Pareto distribution. There's obviously 10% gold, 90% base metal.
When you're talking about your methods of communication, of laying out all these base layers.
Yeah.
I was comparing that to that being high on Molly kind of communication, which is like the fact of having some jewel at the top as the objective is taken for granted and implied, and the communication is much more geared to, well, what's here right now in the most objective terms possible, and how can we iterate upon what's here right now between us with the tool of who you are right now and the tool of who I am right now and the truth that's the arc between us of electricity. Like, the goal is implied just in the action of how can we iterate this by one step in this present moment together.
Yeah. Man, I wish Molly was something that was not so hard on your body, because it'd be fucking great. I feel like just the depth you could get to with people if you regularly sat down and was just like, I think what you have to do is cultivate the ability to do that in normal life, is have like just like a space where you could
kind of like this podcast.
Yeah. Exactly. But this takes so much effort. Although at this point, it almost
Really? Does it take effort?
well, there's been like an arc actually. I feel like over time, the amount of effort it's taken has gotten less and less and less, and it's not that it's asymptotically. It's not asymptotically. It's not that it's asymptotically approaching zero. It's actually going right through zero, and it's going into the negative territory, in the sense that the amount of effort it takes is negative, which is to say that it gives you energy. It would take effort at this point not to do it. So I would feel like somewhat less energized if I didn't do it. So I've accustomed to myself to this state of like taking this in and expecting that.
Yeah, it'll rejuvenate its effort required, I think, as the audience grows to actual numbers. Mm-hmm. That'll be like a new kind of knowing that you're being recorded.
Oh yeah.
And so a little like the thing introduces effort at a pace good for us.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
Far.
Yeah, for sure. Although I don't even mind talking to a limited number of people. I think it's in some ways like really nice to have things start in sort of like a secret context where they can sort of like grow and sort of be honed.
I do mind staying here an interminable time.
Of course. Yeah.
I don't want to. I don't like. Yeah, I'm invested in being uncomfortable here, so that there's some push to go there.
Well, for me, I just take the fact that I'm uncomfortable completely for granted. I'm always dissatisfied.
Yeah.
I've realized that like I'm just never satisfied. And that's like but I'm somehow weirdly okay with that. So if you want to call that like meta satisfaction or something, fine, but it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like I am always leaning forward a little bit and wanting to keep my balance by moving.
For my version of that is why I enjoy those MDMA conversations so much with people. Like my dissatisfaction is what makes me want to talk very deeply with this person.
Right.
It's some mix of like, oh, we're in such a good place right now, let's celebrate it, and where we're at isn't good enough. Let's like iterate upon it right now.
Yeah. That isn't suffering. That's life.
Yeah, that's a real base. Like maybe it's just a It is. It's a distortion of a truth to say life is suffering.
It's not.
It's a very stale distortion, and it's not good. It's what's the like remarkable, distinguishable trait about conscious existence. Well, whatever you decide that trait is will reinforce your experience. So decide that life is suffering at your own peril.
I just think that it's so hard to believe that life is really suffering, because I think if it really was, it wouldn't still be happening.
It would self-terminate.
Yeah, I don't think that the universe would still be having an experience if it wasn't worth it. I feel like it would have ended this shit a long fucking time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think that, so I just think the fact that we're having any experience at all is kind of like, it's like, I don't know, like, really, you think that all this stuff that happened where we are right now, like the bodies we have, the incredible amount of work and persistence that it took to get to the level of like having a really complex experience and not just a cosmic cloud of hydrogen gas or something, you know, the fact that we have like this really, really advanced experience makes me think like, yeah, it's definitely not like something that we're like, oh shucks, we got to keep doing this. Like with that attitude, do you really think you could create the universe with that attitude of like, fine, I guess I'm gonna keep evolving or something, you know, like, no, man, God would have been like, well, I'm not gonna do this.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
well, he would just move from that app to a much more exciting app. And so,
Well, actually, the funny thing is, in the Noah's flood was something like that, where it's like, ooh, whoops. Yeah, I guess even God got a little carried away here. Ooh, I'm gonna go back to the last checkpoint. Like, what is that? What a weird myth. I feel like in a way, though, that myth is almost like tells you something about how humans do have this way of looking at what they've done and going, Jesus.
yeah.
Like, we could we have enough power to fuck things up. Mm-hmm. And so it's like kind of like blinking in the face of your own ability to make symbols do things and have a lot of power over the world that you could do a lot of things with.
Well, every time you speak truth into being is a miniature flood, miniature apocalypse. Because what is the flood, archetypally speaking?
Flooding your serotonin receptors.
Except the washing away of what shouldn't have been there in the first place.
But washing away of what can't survive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And seeing the truth and zeroing in on it is a negation of all the riffraff, shim-sham, loose things that could distract you, but are illusion. You just like wipe that all off the table when you put your finger on the core of the issue and insist on affirming that it is a miniature apocalypse. And it goes the other way too, where like an accidental apocalypse creates that positive affirming effect of truth, anyway.
I think there's another kind of apocalypse that doesn't get enough airtime, and that is the apocalypse of stagnation. The world ending because it has nowhere left to go.
That's like almost like willed malignant, like cancer version of it.
Maybe. It's just like, it's like, imagine that there's two people.
It's like the Dark Ages as an apocalypse.
Yeah. It's the kind of running out of novelty kind of apocalypse. Like you had two people, they really enjoy each other's company. Now lock them in a room for 10 years. Mm-hmm. They can talk to no one and they can have no new experiences. At some point, to keep that relationship alive, you need to be in the world with that person. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like that's what's going on with all the. It might be something that's affecting the apocalypse. Sort of like zeitgeist that's in the world right now is that our image of an apocalypse is everything getting destroyed, but really, the day-to-day apocalypse is just like. Maybe like finding that it's harder there's like a lot less default meaningful states for people to do. There's like less, the path of the easy grab bag of like meaningful lives is been sort of like the cultural idea of like what you should be doing is harder to contend with, and so it's easier to find yourself in a state of like the doldrums.
You can't. Yeah, your sense of meaning can't get socially reinforced, and so it takes a lot more strength to make it reinforced unto yourself when the culture isn't reinforcing the sense of meaning that you've found.
Yeah, that's an uncomfortable place to be. That's a scary place to be. Just not being sure that anything's worth doing. Mm-hmm. And but I think if you just take the entire world and turn it upside down, you solve that problem. Ultimately.
Yeah, which is what physical reality does for you.
It's what it's doing for us. Yeah.
It does that for you automatically.
Yeah. I think it's better to look at like the whole fixating on the idea that the world is changing so much is only one half of what's actually happening right now, because also there's people who are being revealed as like the stones that don't move.
That's right.
And so it's creating this contrast the change and and people who are the same are like being revealed, and that's kind of like a revelation.
Well, there's a like hidden class of everyone alive who has found themselves to be that immovable object, and now there's a whole lot of people alive on Earth together who know that about themselves now because of this latest apocalypse.
It's like the colorblind test where you look at the dots and some of them are a different color. And if you're colorblind, you can't see the dots because they look like they're the same dots as all the other dots. But then with a certain kind of vision, you see that they're all like, oh, yeah, there's something particular about us. Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly discovered myself to be that through the crucible of these events, partially informed by the COVID part of it.
Yeah, I feel like I have a lot less junk laying around me.
I feel like quickened, like the needs have like created a subsequent answer that didn't exist inside me before the need presented itself.
How do you think our lives would be different if COVID never happened? If we continued on 2019 trajectory? What would you and I be doing?
COVID would have happened.
But let's just say it didn't.
It would have still happened.
For everyone?
In a different way. That impact, this is my Space Odyssey monolith, multidimensional bulkhead moving through us theory. Like, that thing was coming for us. It's just a matter of how we choose to experience it. And we chose to experience it in this, like, COVID pandemic thing and other parallel alternate dimensions of us experienced it as some other worldwide event.
But just for the sake of imagination, imagine if 2020 was pretty much the same, 2021 was the same, and then this year we're just like, yep. I think I would have fiddled around a lot more.
Sure.
So, yeah, maybe it's like what you're saying. Maybe it's like that doesn't make sense to imagine that because sort of latent within the state of the world in 2019 was this need for it to happen. So it doesn't make sense to imagine a reality that is not consistent with how things happen.
Like, I would have instigated it unto myself, probably. If the world hadn't given me the excuse, I would have, like, found a way to trigger it myself.
Yeah.
Unto myself.
That's true. Have you had that experience before of voluntarily upending your reality?
Yeah, and the sense of that informs the way in which I was prepared for what happened in 2020. It was familiar. It's like, well, I've said yes to this kind of upending experience, like, in the silence of my own soul, just because it was healthy for me. So, like, I'm ready to do it here too.
Yeah. I had a similar experiences. Moving to Finland and then back to America was kind of like a 2020 experience for me, where the world changed in an instant, and I had this whole experience of getting used to the world, which felt, I mean, not gonna lie, a lot better than 2020, but probably because it was something I chose to do, which I maybe, speaks to the idea that if you don't choose the apocalypse will choose you.
Yeah, and it's better if you can get in front of that choice.
It's better to choose the apocalypse because then you can be friends with it and not take such a dim view.
Yeah, you have a lot more RAM space available in your head.
Yeah.
Because you've, like, stepped into it. Gives you more space to think proactively.
I like this. We need to rehabilitate the idea of apocalypse because we're stuck with it. We can't be clinging to. We can't be like Luddites. Can't be.
It's our art object. It's our clay sculpture. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be a pile of shit forever until we form, like in your words, form the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Into something beautiful and healing.
Yeah, this is how I think about the internet. The internet is the fucking apocalypse, okay?
Nice.
And it's... I mean, okay, I guess whatever. If we want to sit around and be all negative about it and blame Mark Zuckerberg, fine, whatever. Maybe if you need to blame Mark Zuckerberg, this is that Rene Girard thing. He had this social theory that big conflicts in society get resolved by having a scapegoat. That was like one of his signature ideas. But yeah, we can blame Mark Zuckerberg if we need to. But we can't sit around and be negative about this because it's not like the internet's going to go away if we just close our eyes and turn back the clock. Oh, things were so great in 1995 when we were just like listening to like the Backstreet. They were in the 1995, right? The Backstreet Boys?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. I don't really know. I feel like they were. But yeah, we can't just hope it goes away. We really need to make it something beautiful because we are stuck with it.
Yeah,
and this is just the beginning.
That's a thrust of my essay, is highlighting our will to wish it away and try and turn back the clock and illustrating the destructive effects of doing so.
It's an immature perspective to think we can do that.
Politically, that's what Biden is.
He's trying to close Pandoras Box.
Can we just go back to Obama? Wasn't that fun? That's what the Biden election is.
Yeah.
And it just makes things even worse. Well, that will remain to be seen, because, like, would the fabric of the world have survived 4 more Trump years?
The president is giving a special presidential statement today. He's here to announce that we've closed Pandora's Box. And don't you question it. Fact check. Pandora's Box was closed.
And then they're like, actually, he couldn't actually show up today he forgot his lines on the way to the stage. But trust us, Pandora's Box is closed.
Yeah,
he was gonna say it. He was gonna say it.
You know, Biden's just an old man. Everyone's forgot their lines. A lot of people forget their lines. There's a lot of confusion, it's easy to point at someone who's like, here, the teleprompter, this guy, like, he's a focal point for the confusion and uncertainty and not knowing what the fuck to do that a lot of people are staking
and Trump
on.
And Trump's action was to go, everyone's forgotten their lines, and I'm the first person to actually say it. Deal with that.
Yeah. It's funny. It's like, yeah, there's definitely there's something about America that Mark Twain had this whole riff on how America is like a culture that is like really, really good at producing charlatans and geniuses. And you really can't get one without the other. Do you want to, like, what kind of, I personally...
Not at the moment.
I personally want to live...
And there's a fine line between the charlatan and the genius.
Yeah, there's
within that person's
it's a package.
psyche.
It's a package deal. You can't have a society that is intent on shaming people who do outrageous things and hope that and at the same time, then after a while, what you start wanting a savior to come and save you from your lives being boring, the stagnation apocalypse. Yeah. America, though, I think is going to be okay. I think America is going to fare a lot better than people think, because America is really fucking adaptive and unstable and extremely and dangerous and like, you know what though, dude, if the world is changing really fast, you kind of probably want to be living in the dynamic, dangerous society, because in the long term, that's going to fare a lot better than like this, taking your country and like pushing it through some sort of hierarchical system into the image of late 20th century harmony, like the CCP is trying to do or something, where they want to engineer a good future for people. Like, that's some hubris. Okay, maybe if there was 1,000 years of peace and we look back in history and we're like, oh yes, we're in the Star Trek millennium, maybe we trust ourselves now enough to think that we know what's good for us. But, dude, what the hell? 30 years ago, there was some wild shit going on. Like, right now, there's like I don't know if we've reached the level yet as a species where we can engineer what a good society looks like. I think there's a whole lot of letting things play out that needs to be tolerated.
Yes.
And the focus on tolerance. Like, the idea of some kind of grand social engineering vision is not compatible with the ideals of tolerance, which is why so-called liberals are finding themselves in such an identity crisis, because they've always championed the idea that people's choices matter, and now they're uncomfortably up against the wall of having to pretend that they still think that, but they're feeling really guilty about that. They're feeling really, really, really guilty to themselves that they're not cool anymore because they've given up their regard for the human spirit, and that's not a good place to be.
I agree that America will be good, because the philosophies backing it up are just too well locked in with what the human psyche needs to do to thrive. So, like, the whole country could literally get atom bombed, and the free radical idea of America would immediately, like, instantiate.
It would reformulate itself real fast.
Everywhere else, yeah. Because the ideas are just so lively and adaptable.
Well, because the ideas are pretty simple principles. I think if you bombed something like, something that was much more deliberately constructed, there would be a lot less resiliency there.
You'd get much more you'd get much less of, like, a response from that stale or country of restating itself, and much more of the karmic blowback of what it means to bomb another country into oblivion that, like, hurts you more than it hurts them.
Yeah.
That'd be the primary effect of doing something like that.
Karmic blowback.
Yeah.
It's funny how karmic blowback is not a serious topic of political discussion. It totally should be.
Well, it takes, like, Jungian psychology times 10 to, like, accurately articulate the action by which your beliefs inform the action, which then reinforce the beliefs, which gives you your full-blown experience. So to bomb a place means subscribing to a certain belief about the world that doesn't have to be true, but you're making it a little more true by bombing, and then you experience the reality of having made that belief a little more true.
Yeah.
Karmic blowback.
I remember in 2016, Marianne Williamson was one of the candidates to be the Democratic nominee, and they laughed her off the stage. She was this weird new age lady who talked about, like, dark psychic energy or something, and everyone, all those, like, CNN reporters were like, this lady, like, wow. It's at some point the rest of the world is going to reach a point where we're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't be laughing at those people so much.
Right, we laughed her off to our own detriment.
Yeah, and now we're stuck with kind of holding the bag of a lot of the kind of just what's gross about the modern world. The gross parts, the kind of, like, empty, plastic, takeout trash scattered around your bedroom while a Zoom screen dimly flickers while you're supposed to be at a meeting for a job that you hate and you believe is actively not good for the world, but you have to continue to work there to get money.
Yeah, that's it.
Welcome to proof of work, motherfucker. That whole thing. That's nasty. Take a shower, man. Get that shit off you. Clean your room. Take out the trash. Don't make some healthy food. Do yoga. Stretch.
and stay focused on a new agey Marianne Williamson
hey, it's a lot
fantastical archetype.
It's a lot better than what you're suggesting for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
You can make fun of it all you want, but yeah.
That's part of what part of my mission statement of looking the way I do. Is to look this way is implying a different kind of world where people look way different. And that world is a little more possible because one person looks a little different